Hi and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave and this is episode 1633, and today's date is August 8th, 2018, and the title of the episode is Confused on What's Happening with the Economy? Don't be, this is the plan. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now today I just wanted to break down what is happening in the economy and the plan to blame this all on the Fed. And I want to go back in time a little bit here to 2008, then moving forward to understand what is happening here. Now, since 2008, you need to remember we were in this Great Recession. Everything crashed, credit froze up. The government had to step in to bail out the banks, corporations, because if they didn't, everything would have imploded at that point. And they didn't want this to happen. They wanted their system to continue on. So what they did was, and they figured it out back then, well, if we're allowed to create currency, and this is coming from the central bank, we can prop up the banks. If we can get government to allow us to do this, well, we would have a lot more freedom to keep the system going. Because remember, a central bank fiat system only lasts for a certain period of time, usually 40 to 45 years. And then it collapses from the debt level. It cannot be sustained. It's designed this way. It's designed to steal all the wealth from everyone, and at the last stage, you collapse it. But you cover it up with an event like war or something like that to say, hey, this is why you need to sacrifice. This is why we don't have food on the shelves, because we are in war. But really, it had to do with the economy not supporting every single person throughout the world, because the system cannot be sustained. And after the war, after everything is reduced, like population and everything else, governments would then borrow money to rebuild. The central bank would restart the system. Groups would come together and create a brand new type of system, make a currency become the reserve currency of the world. And this is what they've done in the past. But what we've seen here is they kept the system going a little bit longer. And they started to manipulate the data. They started to manipulate everything, because the last end stage of this system that we're in today was to bring us into a one world government. And they needed certain things in place first. And this is why you saw these trade deals. This is why you saw TPP. This is why you saw all this, because they were trying to get the last part of it in place. And this is why you saw the refugees moving into all these different countries to blend the countries to make them all the same. This is why you saw the illegals coming into the U.S. And there were certain agendas associated with this. The biggest one was eventually what was going to happen is they were going to have to bring all these countries to a level playing field. So some of the countries that were, making a lot of money, the workers were making a lot of money, you had to bring the way of life down to even it all out. This was the plan. And then it got interrupted. They thought the next leader was going to be put in place, most likely Clinton. And they thought, okay, we're on track. We're going to be pushing this forward. The TPP would be passed. We'd have a court system above each and every government. We would have a one world system where we control all these different governments through debt, and having a court system above government to instruct them in what to do. And we'd be able to blend all the countries together, bring everyone down to a certain level, and we can trade workers back and forth, and they didn't expect to make more money or anything like that. Well, the whole thing completely fell apart, and that was the introduction of Trump. Now they're in trouble. They don't know what to do. And to undo all of this, which they've been doing for a very long time, and I'm talking about the deep state, the central bank, to undo all of this, well, there had to be drastic measures put into place. And to do all of this, you needed to prop the U.S. back up. And this is what we see happening right now. But it's not to prop it up right now to make it work again under the central bank rule. That's not the point of it. So in the beginning stages, you saw the TPP, it was struck down because we're not going in that direction. You saw the president make a lot of bilateral trade agreements with different countries. NAFTA's under negotiations because it was so intertwined that Congress would have to vote on this to remove it. So they started to negotiate NAFTA, and of course it hasn't really gone anywhere because they've put these things into place to make it very difficult to get out of. And you saw out in England where they voted for a Brexit, which is also having a very difficult time. So we saw all this happening, and we're starting to see that the U.S. is doing something completely different than the central bankers wanted. Then all of a sudden, you saw tariffs. Because remember, what were the central bankers doing? What was the deep state doing all this time? They were taking the wealth from the U.S. and moving it outside of the U.S. And if you look back in time, you can see manufacturing was moved away, companies moved away, everything was being moved away or offloaded into other countries where they would produce the goods. So that brings us back to tariffs. So Trump was making bilateral trade agreements, really doesn't like the central organization to create trade, wanted to have trade with each and every one of these countries. This way it's diversified. And also started to put in place tariffs to make it an even playing field because we were being robbed. Now, the central bankers, on the other hand, looked at this and said, okay, great. He's putting together tariffs. The IMF came out with a warning that if these tariffs continue, it's going to destroy the economy. The central bankers, the biz, the rest, all came out with the same exact warning saying if this continues, the global economy will suffer. Things will implode on itself. We saw financial pundits out there saying all these tariffs are going to implode the economy. Now, they were setting it up where they thought, oh, if he puts these tariffs in place, we know the power of the central bank, we know what they can do, they can bring the economy down, and it will be blamed on Trump. This was the central banker's strategy. Meanwhile, while Trump was doing all of this, putting all this into place and putting these tariffs into place and canceling the TPP, renegotiating the NAFTA deal and making it a little bit more of an even playing field, his plan, and not just him alone, the Patriots' plan was completely different. It was to push this economy to the edge and make it crash. Now, they don't want to be blamed for the crash. They want the blame to be on the central banks. So the news started out, if you remember, the economy's not doing well. Look at real estate. It's because of Trump's economic policies. And it's not just his policies. There's other people behind it. And it's going to bring down the economy. And then all of a sudden, the GDP numbers came in. 4%. Unemployment kept on going down. And all of a sudden, the economy looks like it's doing better than ever. People have more savings. GDP has doubled. Savings rate has doubled. Unemployment is going to be dropping to 3% eventually as they keep going. And the corporate media, they don't know how to explain this because 1 minute ago, they were talking about how the tariffs are going to destroy the economy. The IMF was out there saying how the tariffs are going to destroy the economy. And now everything looks better than ever. GDP 4%. Some say it might even go to 5%. Unemployment the lowest we've ever seen it. People are getting off food stamps. This whole thing doesn't make sense. It's very confusing. The plan is to trick the central banks, to trick the mainstream media, almost like North Korea, where you think something's happening, but behind the scenes, other things are happening. Now remember, what is happening here is to push the central bank into doing something so they're to blame for the crash. So if the economy is really doing well and the central bank over many, many months have been saying, we're going to raise the rates if the unemployment rate comes down. We're going to raise the rates if we see inflation ticking up. This is fantastic. We're going to raise the rates if GDP is better. And you start to see all this happen. Now the central bank, the Fed, well, since they've been talking about this all along, and they've been raising the rates, they're going to have to continue this. Trump put it out there that, hey, I don't think you should be raising the rates, but you do what's best. Now, he set them up. This whole thing is a setup. Now, yes, there are people out there really thinking that the economy is doing well. This is part of the plan, the illusion, to make everyone believe that Trump has created this economy that's better than ever. It's screaming right now. But if you look at all the fundamentals and everything behind it, nothing's really changed. All they did was change the statistical numbers. That's all they've done. That's all they've done right now. Nothing else has changed at all. We don't have new plants coming in and more of the manufacturing moving out of China, out of Korea, out of all these other countries, moving back to the United States. We don't see that as of yet. And it's not going to be that easy. You just can't take everything that was changed by the central bank and the deep state and just flip it around in a year and a half. That's quite impossible. It's not going to happen. So you can see what is happening here. There's an illusion going on that the economy is doing well, and it's being done on purpose to force the central bank. And again, remember, we've been talking about who's going to control the narrative. It's to force the central bank into raising the rates. And if we go back to 2005, 6, 7, you can see what the central bank did back then. As soon as they hit a certain point, everything started to fall apart. And they knew it was going to happen, and they crashed the economy. Why? Because they knew they were going to need to print money like there was no tomorrow. And the only way to do this was to crash the economy and show that the economy needs this. They need to pass a bill where it allows the Fed to do things they've never done before. But here we are today. This time it's going to be completely different. Because this time the narrative is not going to be owned by the central bank. The narrative is going to be owned by Trump and the Patriots. And Trump is not going to crash the economy. He's going to force the central bank to crash the economy. Because what's happening here is he's showing the world, look how great the U.S. economy is doing right now. Look at our GDP numbers. Look at our unemployment numbers. Look what's happening here. So with the economy doing so well, with NAFTA being renegotiated, TPP struck down, bilateral trades, tariffs, how in the world is the economy going to collapse under Trump from his and the Patriots' economic policies? It's kind of impossible, isn't it? So on one side, we have Trump and the Patriots showing the economy is stronger than we've ever seen it before. Now he wants the central bank, the Fed, to do what they do best. Raise your rates. Why? Because you know what's best for the economy. He said this. He set them up. So now the Fed is going to raise the rates. Now remember, to make the economy strong, yes, there's going to be defense spending. Actually, that's on purpose because the U.S. forces have been weakened for a very long time, because once we were under the control of the UN and all the deep state actors and central banks, they didn't want a fighting force. They wanted a weakened military. That was on purpose. And they're not building the military up to go invade countries. Building the military up to protect the U.S. from the deep state, from the intelligence agencies, to protect from outside or inside forces, not to invade. Very big difference. Now, again, there's going to be deep state actors outside of the country. It's to protect against those also. So with this economy so strong, Trump and the Patriots wants the Fed, and is trying to force the Fed into raising the rates as quickly as possible. They don't have to raise them that much. Everyone's projecting around 3% or so, and all of a sudden everything will start to crash down. Now the central bank, they realize what's happening here. They understand what's going on. And it's going to be very difficult for them to argue their way out of this. And they know it. And we can see that this is going to be a battle until the end. Now remember, don't get confused because the economy is doing well. Go back prior to 2008. How well was the economy doing? Everyone had a job. Unemployment was pretty darn low. And I don't mean every single person. Yes, there were still people unemployed, but the unemployment rate was very, very low. Real estate was skyrocketing. The stock market was hitting all-time new highs. And everyone thought it was never going to end. I mean, if you remember the Big Short, what did they do? They shorted they shorted the subprime security market because they looked inside and said, this is all garbage. And everyone laughed at them because they thought, why would this system that's doing so great ever fail? Housing will never go down. They'll never collect on this stuff. It's rated AAA. Just because statistics and rating agencies are telling you something, it doesn't mean it's true. It means they created an illusion. Q has always told us, enjoy the show. This is a show. I mean, right now, if Trump just came out and said to everyone, hey, listen, by the way, all these years the economy's fake, it's phony, and if we really look at the real numbers, unemployment's 18%, GDP is negative 5%, or negative, 0.5 or 1.5%, whatever the number is, what would happen? It would just collapse on its own, and who would to blame? He would, because he went out there and told everyone. You need to push this in a certain way to get those who created this system out of the picture. And this is why Trump has Andrew Jackson hanging on the wall in his office. This is the end stage of everything that's going on right now. And all we need to do is get to that point, and there will be a transition. Is it going to be easy for everyone? No. They're going to make it as best as possible. But again, we're going from one system that's completely corrupt to a brand new system. It's not like, oh, hey, here's a switch, let me throw it, and now everyone will continue on, because all this debt, all this currency, I mean, it's going to go to zero. People are going to have to readjust in the way you live, in the way we do things. And there will be pain. It's not going to be easy. People are going to have trouble with it. But we are headed in that direction. You can see what is happening. So get prepared and get ready, because it's coming very soon. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.